And we're here under this incredible dome. It's quite a surprise coming down that corridor and then boom, steam engine. 1895, Sowerby Bridge, Yorkshire.
This is a 1917 Melbourne. It's an electric car.
This is the first room in the Canadian Museum of Making. Welcome to Power Struggle. I'm your host, Stewart Muir. We're here west of Calgary at the Wild Buffalo Ranch inside the Canadian Museum of Making. And we're talking to its founder, Ian MacGregor. A source of ideas for me for a few ideas, one of the most interesting probing thinkers and doers I know of anywhere in Canada. We're going to do a special segment today. We're going to have a couple of small episodes, so this is the first one. Welcome to Power Struggle. Ian, where are we?
This is my place out in the country. So it's about 45 minutes from downtown Calgary. Yeah. And it's on Jameson Road on the old 1A highway north of Ghost Lake.
The Canadian Museum of Making.
Yep.
Did you make anything in here?
Yeah, there'd be some things I've made in here. I don't know what they are. They're probably small things.
I'm wondering about this table. If you made this table, it spins around.
Yeah, I would say if I take credit for making it, but
we'll have to get a shot of the overhead. It's big. Is it 10 feet across?
Yeah, something like that.
Yeah, it must weigh a ton.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, we tried to make everything here. The idea was that if you touch something here, it's likely made by somebody. It's likely handmade to a high standard.
Of all the names for a museum, you chose Making. Why is that?
I think I have a belief that the interesting things that survive are utilitarian objects, but someone took great care in their design, and so they have a purpose that outlives their utility. And so they're a beautiful object in some way, and they used to be utilitarian, but they were beautiful. Then they lost their utility because something else replaced them and was better. But the beautiful aspect of it allowed the object to survive. And so this is a place where we collect those kind of things.
You know, some people who've accomplished what you have in life, maybe they would be sailing around the Mediterranean in their yacht, but you're here, you're making things every day. You've got your machine shop and your businesses and your encouragement of innovation in carbon capture and climate issues. You're here doing it, and I just think that's incredible.
I don't want to die from boredom. Yeah, I can't think of anything worse than floating around on a boat somewhere or sitting on some island. I just can't imagine spending my life doing that.
So you're an engineer.
Yeah.
You're a tinkerer, an inventor, an industrialist. It's quite a resume you've got. And the first time I came here, this is my third visit to the Canadian Museum of Making. I didn't know what was beneath what you call the cabin we're in.
Yeah.
And we're going to see this on the podcast on Power Struggle, because I think when others see it, they will have a similar impact. It's not quite the same as being here, but the impact it made on me was to want to learn more. So I'm really glad you've invited me to come back and dig deeper, because the story of why this museum is here, why you built it, what it's for, is the story I want to talk about. So how long has this ranch property we're on been here?
So my mom and my dad worked in a machine shop. My mom was a school teacher, and we had a summer cabin across the river about 10 kilometers from here. And so my mom and I would come out for the summer, and we would be out here every summer, all summer long. And all of us fell in love with the place. And so this was a traditional homestead. It was called the Jameson Place. And it was homesteaded in the early 1880s, so before the railway got here. And Sandy Jameson, the grandson of the homesteader, died, and his wife had it, and she sold it. And so my mom and dad wanted to retire out here, so they bought it, and that was the start of all this stuff.
And what was here then? Was this house?
No, that part of the house was out in the field. So when you come in, there's a new house that was built in about 1961, and they dragged this cabin out in a field there and just left it there. And the start of this was, I have to give you more probably than you want to hear. So my life's lived in 5 to 10 year increments. And usually what that means is I start a business, I get the business working. When it works well, at that point, I hate it. I don't want to do that job. I want to do the job of picking a new one. So usually someone else comes along and buys it off me then, and then I retire, I call it retired. And so when I'm retired, I still build things, but I build things without too much regard for cost or schedule. And so I focus on trying to make something that's beautiful and resonates with me. And so this was built in one of those periods, and then the museum part that's underground was built in another one.
And what is the function of the museum?
People come through and look at it. It's a way, there's a few things that come out of a museum like this. So I think the first and most important one is you save things that might get melted down or thrown in a dump or something that will never be here again. And so I like to save those things, and I think it's important that somebody is the custodian of them. I don't see myself as the owner, really. I see myself as the custodian for somebody else that will get them. So that's the first thing that's important. Second thing is it's a place where I get to, there's a tactical part of your life and there's a strategic part of your life. And so this is built for me to be strategic, and my strategic life is completely separated from my tactical life. In your tactical life, somebody's saying, I want to talk to you right now, or here's a phone call, or you got to go do this, or, just that barrage of things that comes from being active. And if you don't get away from that, it's very difficult to think strategically. So this is made for me to think strategically and try and direct how I spend the remaining however amount of time I got left. I want to do it on stuff that's fun. So it's set up to do that. So that's another reason for it. And I'm really comfortable because each thing in here was something that I liked. And so they're all placed in a place where that's a cool thing. I want to see it sometimes. Then the final thing is, when you have a place like this, people come. And, like I have a group of, just a representative group is like the Model T Club for North America, brings all the Model Ts that they can in North America here 1 year. So you invariably meet somebody on those things that's right off the chart. You'd never meet them in your normal life, but there's some tremendously interesting character that shows up as part of it. And so I would never meet them in the way that I meet them with this.
People must take away different things depending on who they are. I took away that there's a chronological story as you enter the top of the museum and you begin to progress through, and you're moving through time and different technologies, but there is a kind of arc of time there. That was my feeling.
Yeah, I think that's right. And that was sort of the intent of part of the organization, I think, for sure.
One of the things I hope to talk to you about later on is when we get down to almost the last exhibit in the museum. It's a incredible 1917 Milburn electric vehicle. Let's not go down that storyline now because it's its own thing. But the first time I saw it, I was instantly intrigued. What is the arc of this story? Where does it go? And it just left me fascinated. So you have a gift for kind of planting ideas and Easter eggs that we're going to discover. So,
okay, well, that'd be good.
My sense of the museum is that you're traveling through time from early to later. Is that fair?
Yeah, I think that's it's sort of technological time, or the sophistication. Not sophistication's the wrong word. Primitive technologies are really sophisticated, but they're sophisticated because they have to rely on a limited range of inputs, and so. But we try to tell the story of sophisticated primitive technologies and then move to industrial revolution. And that's at the end of at the end of the First World War, I'm kind of losing interest of that story.
Yeah. Well, there's a sense I also get that maybe in our modern comforts and sophistication, we forget that humans have been incredibly sophisticated for a long time.
Yeah, we've been really sophisticated for a long time, and we've been trying to manipulate our environment to live better, and we're continuing to do that. And sometimes people who don't understand all that kind of forget that's where we came from. But this has been going on for 1,000 years now, and it's unlikely to stop.
Now, I'm afraid someone might get the impression that the world around us here is from a time of lower precision, and when we didn't have a way to get the fine machining that we have now. But on this ranch property, you have got as good as it gets anywhere in the world in terms of precision engineering and manufacturing of components of things.
Almost as good. Yeah, it's good. We can do anything here that we need to do in our environment, and that includes making some pretty sophisticated things. Because we understand how the things are actually made, we can understand how to apply them better than somebody who doesn't understand how they're made. And we think that's the source of competitive advantage in the things that we do.
This must be one-of-a-kind property. What do people say about it when they come here?
Your wife probably asked him, what the guy do all that stuff? What's all that stuff for? So I guess. I mean, these things are always, there's lots of these collections around. They're always kind of a glimpse into the intellect of the person who assembles them. It's always kind of weird and probably really cool for him and not so cool for other people. I don't know what they think here. I like it too because we get little kids here, or I'll say less than 13. And many of those kids have never touched anything but a computer. They never saw anything physical. And so they're always really, really intrigued when they see something physical, and they ask you questions that, you're astounded at some of the questions because they're really, really insightful questions from someone who's never seen how something's done. They've just watched it on the screen, Yeah.
Well, this is one of the challenges of the STEM education field of getting that mindset going. Yeah, this would be a really good starter for a career in engineering.
Yeah, we try and get them through here because, the other thing, people, they have a strange idea of engineers. And so I'm trying to correct that idea. An engineer used to be someone who had an idea to something, then he did it, he built it, and then he turned that into a business and he lived off the rewards of that. Now, most of the engineers are some kind of consultant that, you hire by the hour, and once the hour's up, then he goes back and does some other hourly job. And, I think there's a wonderful life that we live in Alberta, but anywhere in Canada. If you're an engineer, you can control your environment. You can manipulate it in ways to produce new things that are of value. And why would you ever do that instead of working by the hour? I mean, it's like, I don't get why you don't do that. So I try to talk people into doing it wherever I can.
Can you give us a little snapshot of your career? You mentioned 5-10 your phases that you've tried to section it. What are some of the notable projects that even would be things that a lot of people recognize and know about?
Oh, so when I started off, I went to grad school, and back in those days, if you were a white person, you just got accepted at grad school. It didn't matter how stupid you were. So I got into grad school. I didn't have the marks to get in, but everybody else in there was East Indian or Pakistani. A white guy shows up, they say, come on in, we want to have you. So I'm in grad school. And it turns out I don't really like it. It's like I can memorize books, okay, but that's not fun for me. So I'm memorizing all these books and thinking, I don't like this. I got to figure out how to get out of here. And I'm in the office one day, and there's these two salesman-looking guys talking to the secretary, and they're saying, do you know anybody around here who could make a machine? Well, at that point, I've been going to work with my dad for 15 years every Saturday morning in a machine shop. So if it's something to make in a machine, I can probably do it. So I'm listening to these guys for a while. I think I could do that. So I go over to the guy and say, hey, I could make that machine. And the guy says, how much you want? I have no idea. I'm making $300 a month at this point. Guy says, I don't know. What do you think it's worth? I say, $5,000. That's the biggest number I could think of. He says, okay, we'll do it. So the machine is over there on the desk. I made the machine. But what I did is I quit university, rented a double garage, borrowed some money from my dad, probably all the money he had in the world. He let me to buy a lathe and a milling machine and a drill and a welder, and then started a business. And that's how I started. I never worked for anybody else in my life. It's been a wonderful life.
You built oil refineries.
Yeah, I mean, some of the things of moment. I used to own the fourth largest gas plant in Canada up in Taylor, BC, and we doubled its size. So $375 million when we got there, $750 when we left. I owned the world's largest deepwater drilling rig. I bought it out of a bankruptcy in Mississippi and hauled it up to Halifax, finished construction, and then drilled for a couple of years off the East Coast in a company we formed to drill. Built the Sturgeon refinery. That was $12 billion we spent on it. The flow sheet I drew on a napkin. It's over there on the wall. So I think I'm one of the few people alive that actually dreamed up a mega project and got to see it in operation. And then we built the Alberta Carbon Trunk Line, and that is the world's largest operational system for managing man-made CO2. So I got to do that. So, I had lots of fun.
Yeah, it's not just a diverse career, but it seems to have its own arc itself in terms of the things you're talking about more. I mean, the last thing you mentioned, the carbon trunk line and the work you're doing with CCUS, carbon capture, utilization and storage. And you've been here talking with a great podcaster who's interested in nuclear issues. Yeah. The future is a big part of what you're doing. It's not just here we are surrounded in the past, but you're thinking about the future. I think that's so fascinating.
Yeah, I mean, I think the past informs some way about what you're going to do in the future. If you understand the past well enough, you'll see obvious things that are perhaps mistakes is too big a word, but they're not right. And you see things in the past and somebody how corrected to make it right. And you think, well, some of that commonality survives in the new things.
This incredible dome, what's the backstory of this?
The whole building here was built from recovered wood. So I took down a giant timber frame warehouse and saved all the wood. And inside the building was 4 little offices. The walls were made out of 2x4s. And so I got the strange idea that I didn't want to cut any of the 2x4s. So I had to figure out how to use 4 lengths of 2x4s. And that's what I made the roof out of. So that's how the roof turned out like that.
It's an incredible piece with that wrought iron around. It's got the "in the mountains of truth, you never climb in vain" quote up there. Let's go over here. It says Boilermakers, union strong. I think the Boilermakers are a great union. I know a lot of folks who work on the tools with the Boilermakers.
Yeah.
What are we looking at here, Ian?
Well, it's my fireplace. I made it out of an old steam engine, and I'm an engineer, so I didn't want a rock in my living room, so I wanted a machine, so that's what I got. And the Boilermakers, I work with lots of Boilermakers, so they're good friends of mine.
There we go. Oh, there it is. Look at that. Then we fold that out.
Now you can have a fire in there.
That must be nice on a winter's evening.
Guaranteed to put you asleep if you're in this room.
Yeah, these armchairs will do that. Well, let's keep going.
Sure.
As you said, it's full of the history of making things. And one thing.
I mean, I got it set up so that for the kind of work I do, this room was built for me to work.
Yeah, I can see the inspiration flowing through here. This wood stove here has got, it almost looks like a trophy on top. What's the story of this?
So
Incredible.
The original homestead cabin, which we'll be in a second here. And it's just it's a beautiful object, and I'm sure it was an expensive thing for them to afford when they bought it.
It says Cuba, number 24. Is that to do with the country of Cuba?
No, I think it was just a name. I think that they chose that it was kind of an exotic name for a Canadian stove manufacturer.
You think roughing it back in the homesteading days, they didn't have a lot of fancy things, but this is one fancy wood stove.
I think so, yeah. I think it is, and I think it must have had to save for a while to get it.
Oh yeah, what a thing of beauty. You've preserved it, you probably restored it. Or was it like this all along?
No, my mom and dad fixed it up for me for Christmas one year, so I got a sentimental attachment to it. And in the cabin here, so the cabin was built in 1882 and 1883.
This is the original building we're in now.
So we moved it, but we sort of tried to get it back as close as it was. And the cabin, so I met a really old lady once, and she had come here to a party when she was a young girl. So she was like 3 or 4. And this used to have a second floor in it, and they put her up in the bedroom when they had the party downstairs, and she was supposed to sleep. And she could remember that the stovepipe was red hot going through her room, so she was always
right up there. Wow. And you can see the original walls. Maybe you've rebuilt some of the ceiling
we
parts.
rebuilt the roof, but everything we tried to get it as close to the way as it was that we could. Yeah.
So these stairs here, where do they lead?
So we'll go downstairs. I'll show you around down there. Then eventually we'll get to my basement.
Okay, let's go. A lot of family pictures here.
Yeah, it's family stuff, so you know where it came from,
The MacGregor story in Alberta.
Come out of there. Okay.
Into the pool room.
So laid out on this table is a project we've been working on for about 20 years now. And we started, my mom and dad bought a quarter section of land out here. And as I got lucky in my life, I bought more land around that. And we ended up with quite a bit of land. And, I always feel like I'm the temporary custodian of these things. It's not permanent. It's not durable. Somebody else is going to show up later and they're going to own it. And sometimes you think, well, I've got an opportunity to get it off on the right foot. And if I do that, then it'll be really cool for the future. And if I get it off on the wrong foot, it'll be really bad for the future. So this is our attempt at trying to get off on the right foot. You can divide the land that I had into 40-acre pieces. And I felt like if you did that, you'd end up with roads and power lines and gas lines all over the place, and it just wouldn't look the way it does right now. So I went to the MD and I said to them, how about you let me take all the things we could have built, concentrate them in one place, and do it really well. Don't, do it as good as can be done on that land. And then put conservation easements on all the places where the development sites came from. So this is a project we've been working on for about 20 years. And we think we're achieving the objective. We got 3 or 4 really cool houses built over there now. And my daughter's taken over. She's an architect, and her husband are taking over the thing. So it's a family kind of, labor of love, I would say.
Yeah. And as you said, doing it right takes time, and you need to take the time.
It takes time, and you really need a lot of, there's many people who have done variants of this before, and you have to talk to them all and listen to them and walk around with them and ask them what they think. And, I'm not a developer. I know how to build stuff with pipes and valves and not, things like this. But if you talk to really high-end people that have thought about it a lot, you're gonna be able to come up with a good plan. And so that's what we think we got here.
Well, people want to be connected to the landscape here in Calgary. On the way out on the highway coming out, you see a lot of really magnificent houses on those properties, not far from the highway.
Yeah.
It feels like you're doing something here. It's got a very different vibe from that, though.
Yeah, I mean, there's a picture on the TV set there. It's kind of like, that's what we're doing. So we fit the first house in that notch in the rock there. This is the house we built. That's us laying it out there. And when we did this, so we got the guy who built or was involved with the design of Bill Gates' place to come and design this house. And we had the idea people are building things that are way too big. And so we were trying to do this. We're trying to say, what does someone like me and my wife need when you're more than 60 years old? What do you really need? So we decided we need 750 square feet. So we're going to build a house that you can live in comfortably that's 750 square feet. So Jim Cutler, the guy that was the architect, he was working on a 40,000 square foot house when he came to work on this one. And was really successful, but he had to really adjust his mind because the bathroom in the house he was working on was 800 square feet. So anyway, that's a picture of it there. It turned out really good. I mean, it's a beautiful place. We can open this. Oh. Come on, Doc. Okay. Okay.
Well. This is the first room in the Canadian Museum of Making.
Sure.
What's this all about?
So there's a theme here. I always think I'm the custodian of something. And so I worked with a guy named Dan Matto, and Dan lives out in the coast now. I think he lives in Victoria. He's like a world expert in African metalwork. So this started off, I was buying one piece at a time, and I was buying because I like the look of it. I thought this is a cool thing. So I started buying it. And then I realized I was starting to buy counterfeit stuff. So I met Dan, and he helped me try and not buy counterfeit stuff anymore. And then we started thinking, this stuff is all being sold because it was the time when the AIDS epidemic was really coming into full force. And people were having to sell things that were really important, religious, ceremonial, or familial. They were heirloom type things. And they were having to sell them to live. And they were selling them one thing at a time to different buyers all the time. So we started talking about it. If that goes on for very long, you're going to lose the ability to tell a cohesive story. So what we decided was, well, we got to get in the way of that. We got to make sure that the story is preserved, and that's going to take a certain depth and breadth of collection to be able to do that. So we spent about 10 years trying to build such a collection. It doesn't really belong here. It should be back in Africa someplace. And as soon as we think we can send it to a place where it won't get stolen, we'll do that. So we're the temporary custodian. Yet again, we're the guys that, we don't want this knowledge and information and beauty and symbolism to be lost. So we're trying to preserve that.
And is there one signature piece here?
Oh, so the thing that really resonates with me in the whole place, it's behind over here. I'm about tools and I'm about making stuff and about how to figure it out. So this thing is a hole. So it looks like that. You tie a stick on here, and then you can use it just like we use a hole. But as you use it, you wear it down, and it keeps getting smaller and smaller. And the place where it comes from, the people believe that the energy of the work is stored in the object. So that object when it gets down here has really got a lot of energy in it. And they also believe that that can be dangerous. And so what they do is they take it to a blacksmith, and then he heats it up and forges it down into something that looks like this. And so when he does that, he performs a ceremony on it that makes the energy stay, but the potential badness of the energy leave. And so now you can have that in your house, and it's a source of goodwill and good energy, but it doesn't hurt you.
So this was a farm implement that's been turned into a
they just took this and wrapped it all up and welded it. Yeah. So that resonates a lot with me, because if I see an old tool, first thing I want to do is grab it and touch it and feel like it, for some reason, I don't know what.
And one day this will go back to the continent that it came from.
Yeah. And I've talked to Glenbow. Glenbow has a really good collection too.
Yeah.
And the plan would be to put the two of them together. That makes it as good as anybody in the world, and then we'll send it back.
There's a story of technology here of maybe, would some people say, I'm surprised that civilizations I've never heard of did something so beautiful, and there's a lot of engineering and knowledge in this object.
Totally. Yeah. There's a huge amount of intellectual capacity in just making it and getting it. And people don't realize, I don't think enough, that in a primitive culture, metal is one of the few things that has value that you can take with you. So, you could concentrate a lot of work in a piece of metal, and the work is repurposable. So you could make this into a knife or a tool or an ornamental object. And the source of your wealth is either animals or a piece of metal. That's what you got to work with.
So it's stored wealth, stored energy,
right,
and future potential, all in this one piece.
Yeah. It's all thermodynamics. We brought order to that piece, and that order has value.
But they had to mine the ore too. So there's a whole story of trade and sophistication of extraction and finding and metallurgy.
And in primitive cultures, you have to find, so those things, we didn't have the ability to move things so far. So in a primitive culture, you have to have the ore you have to have really high quality ore. You have to have a lot of wood, because you're going to make charcoal to smelt the metal. And then you have to have a special kind of clay. So you make the furnace out of wood, and then you line the inside of the furnace with a special kind of clay so the furnace doesn't burn down. And you need all those things in close proximity to be able to do it.
So in the story of making, this is really the first stage, literally, in the museum of your mind. And we've entered that now, Ian. And now
that's true. Yeah.
And now we're going to go to the next stage of this. Yeah. And I'm going to put this beautiful object back here.
So this room is mostly alloy things, and alloy things are a lower temperature smelting process. So the first step in the process, I make copper, bronze, and things like that. And then as I become more sophisticated and more knowledgeable, then I switch to iron. Okay, so this is a kind of a transition, I guess, from that's sort of the Bronze Age culture back there, and this is iron in this part of the museum. And these are all really finely crafted objects that are made from iron. Most of them have both a ceremonial and I'll call it a functional purpose that you use in the way you live, but they're also an object that you just like to look at.
And now we've transitioned into a room that looks like it has arts and some very special story pieces here. I've never seen anything like this. What is this?
So these are called a staff, and they would go in a small village. They'd go outside the most important person's house, and what's on the top of the object is a parable of something that happened important in that community. And we often lose the parable. In fact, we almost always lose the parable, because they came from a place where we're not the first buyer, and so we don't get the story. So some of them, we got a few of them, but not very many, I would say. Yeah.
And on the walls, you've got some arrows and maybe some weapons here, knives and tools. And
there's a combination of objects that you use in your life, weapons that you might have to fight with somebody about, and then things that are just artistic shapes. And a lot of times you'll find that a real weapon evolves into an artistic item or a symbol of authority. It's not really used as a weapon anymore, but it's a symbol of authority. Yeah.
And all these things had to be forged.
Yeah.
They have that in common. They're all made of metal.
Yeah. And they all you had to collect the iron ore, and then you had to smelt the ore, and then you had to forge it to get it to be iron, and then you had to make the object.
There's an author we both know, Václav Smil, Canadian author. One of his books has a great title, How the World Really Works. I think this is almost like how the world really works.
Totally.
As a museum space, because you have to get all of these things in order to live.
He writes books that everybody in the world should read. They're just such insightful stories about how we got to where we are, how unaware we are of all the system behind what feeds us today or the way we live today or all those things. They're really great books. Yeah.
And the numbers and the stories are almost impossible to comprehend, the amount of energy in our lives to live as we do. It seems so simple.
Yeah.
And you look at the processes. Yeah, this is a great adventure coming through this. So let's carry on. There's another corridor down here.
Okay.
Where does it lead?
So this is kind of the border where this is primitive on this side, industrial revolution on the other side here. The things in the cabinets are called a steam indicator, and they make a pressure volume diagram for a steam engine. And that is a diagnostic tool. So you can tell how well and how efficiently the engine is running by what this thing does. The reason I got interested in it is kind of a story of the evolution of the steam engine. So when we first get steam engines, they're really low pressure and really slow. And then as we figure out how to make them better, they speed up and they operate at higher pressure. So the indicator has to evolve along with the engine, and that's really what this is. There's about 700 different kinds, and I got about 400 of the kinds. So I'm on a quest to get a complete set.
So a couple hundred years ago, there would have been an engineer. If their job was to maintain and design steam engines, that engineer would have...
He'd have one of these.
Right.
Yeah.
So this is someone's actual working tool here.
Yeah.
And it looks so worn. It's got that feel to it.
And usually they're such a beautiful, intricate thing. Somebody that has no idea what they were for rescues it and saves it. So, it's in some place and then...